Hello and welcome to this lecture where we'll set up Git and GitHub. So Git is used for version control, and it's used for version controlling locally, and then you host it in somewhere called GitHub. You could host it in GitLab or somewhere else. However, in this lecture, we'll go through how to set up your Git locally and then how to create a GitHub account and then go into GitHub and create a repository. And then we will clone this repository down and see how that flow works. In a previous video, we have gone through a little bit of theory of how GitHub works. So a very basic theory in a previous video, but in this video, we'll just go into the setup part and then showing short examples. So let's go into the browser to see how we'll get started. So here I am in the browser, so I just have Google open here. So I'll just type in git download. And then you come into this link here, git, to go into git, download here. And for me, it's Mac OS. For you, it could be Mac, Windows, or Linux. So depending on which system you have, just download this. And when you have downloaded it, install it using the default configurations. So just click OK on everything, and then you have installed it. And when you have installed it, following the instructions, you will be able to open up Git in your terminal or your Git bash. So if you're in Windows, open up something called Git bash. So this is the terminal that we'll be using. And for Mac, you use the normal terminal. And also for Linux, you use the terminal. So here I will open up my terminal. So this is how the terminal looks like. Actually, I cannot increase that one. So if I just type git -version, and then you can see I have a git version, a certain number. And if you get this, it works. If you don't get this, maybe there's something with alias that you need to fix or something with path. And for that, you need to debug it further in case this simple command doesn't work. And also try to restart the computer, for example, if you haven't tried that, if this doesn't work, and then debug it further if it doesn't work. However, if it works, congratulations, you have come this far. So now we have the terminal, and now it's time to go into GitHub. So github.com. And from here, you should create your own repository. So create a repository in GitHub or create an account in GitHub if you don't have this yet. Since this is the initial setup, I assume that you don't have it. So when you have created your account, it will look like something similar to this. So this is my account, and then you can create a new repository. You have new repository and you click it here. So this repository name, we can call it Git and GitHub first demo. Okay, so if I type it like this, you will have dash for each of the spaces. However, I actually like to do it like this, git_GitHub _ first demo. Okay, I'll keep it public. Public means that everyone can access this repository. However, it's only you that can push only you can push new things to this repository. So we'll go through what this means soon. And if you want to make it private, you click it here. And if it's private, it's only you that can push. It's only you that can see this repository, this code. And also you can invite other collaborators to also see this code and can push codes to it. So here is an important part. I'll add a README. And when you add a README, this makes it simpler so that you will get something in the repository from start. So this README is for doing some documentation, what this repository is about. And a gitignore is also very good to have. So if you're working with, for example, Python, then you should have Python gitignore. If you're working with something else, just search for that one and see which gitignore template that exists. So I'll pick Python. License, we'll keep it as none for now. Later on, I might make a video of different types of licenses, but for now, just keep it none. And then you can create your repository. And congratulations, you have your first repository. So this is the GitHub first demo. So what you can do here is that you can copy this one. So you just click on the code, copy URL to clipboard. Then I open up my terminal. And inside my terminal, let's see where I am. I'll do ls. This is to list all the folders that exist here. So then I will go cd documents, and cd means change directory. So I changed my directory to documents, and to autocomplete, I click tab. So what I do is DOC tab, and then I have autocompleted, and click enter. Then I'm inside of documents. If I do ls, I will list all the things that are inside here. What I suggest is that you create a GitHub folder where you can store all of your GitHub repositories. To create that, you do GitHub, and then you click enter. This will create a GitHub folder, and inside of the GitHub folder, we'll place all our repositories. So for each course that you will study with me, I suggest you will have at least one repository for that course. And for each passion project that you are making, you should have a repository for that. Okay? So after you have done a GitHub folder, do cd GitHub. I'll clean my terminal here. For now, your GitHub folder will be empty. Actually, I should do like this. I could have done this before, but I actually couldn't. I wanted to zoom in, but it didn't work. So what you can do now is to git clone, paste it in. And in Windows, to paste it in, you have to do Shift Insert. There's an insert button. Or you can right-click and paste. And in Mac, it's Command V. So then you click Enter, and you have cloned the repository. So what that means is that we do make a copy of the one that is in remote, which is in your GitHub, clone it to your local repository. So now you can do cd to this repository. Let's see, cd, what is called? Git, GitHub. I have several. So git GitHub first demo. So if I list here, ls for listing, I have readme.md. If I do ls-a, that means I will see all the files, even the hidden ones, which are having a prefix of a dot. And then you can see we have .git and .gitignore, and we have readme.md. So .git, this is the folder which makes possible for Git to track all the versions and track your work, so that when you commit your changes, all the history will be stored in the .git folder. But that is only locally. So what you do is that when you have committed your changes locally, you can push it, and then it will be sent to the remote. That is, it will be sent to GitHub. Okay, and that is basically... No, one more thing you need to do is, I'll type it here, configure email and a username. This you should do as well. So these two commands you need to do. Copy this one. Git config-global username. Let me zoom in a little bit. Username, first name, last name. And then set your email address with git config-global user.email and then your user email. So this you need to do the first time, else you don't need to do it anymore. And then when you have this, you should have installed an IDE for working with programming. So the IDE that I choose is Visual Studio Code. Let me actually close that one. So I can do like this. Or you can open up Visual Studio Code with the code command. If you're in Windows, if you're in Mac or Linux, you need to configure it yourself. However, you can open VS Code. When you open VS Code, you have it like this, and then you can click on the open folder and you go into document, you go into the GitHub folder, and inside of the GitHub folder, you find this GitHub. Let me see, Git. I have too many folders. GitHub first demo. So this is what you will see. This is the README. You can click on here to see that, yes, Git and GitHub. I can change this one, for example. Git and GitHub. Git and GitHub first demo. I will commit this first demo. Okay, save this one. And what you get is here, you can see there's a 1 here on source control. So the first time, I think you need to configure when you're doing push that you need to configure a remote. It will tell you to sign in and authorize to your GitHub. However, when you have done that, you can simply go into here and you can commit and push your changes. So I will say this is my first init. First commit it, and then I can push it. And now, if I go into my browser, I will go into my repository. I will update it, and you can see that I will commit this first demo. Okay, and you can see this is now in my remote repository. And if I go back to my Visual Studio Code, you can see this is what I have. So what you should do is that you can also do it via the terminal. So in Visual Studio Code, or if you're in Mac, you should definitely use the terminal. If you're in Windows, you should change it to Git Bash, because it will open up in PowerShell, or let me think, PowerShell, or another one which I forgot the name of. Maybe it's called Bash. No, I forgot the name. However, you can change it here. Here you can change to select default profile, and you choose which one you want as the default profile. And what I would do is I would choose Git Bash if I was in Windows. Okay, and now when you have done that, you can simply do this. For each time there is something new in the remote that is not synced in the local, then you can do git pull. So that means you will sync it. So now it says already up to date, but if you had something new there and it wasn't in the local, and you do git, and you will get the new changes down. So that is a good command. And then you will have git. I will show you here. New things to be committed to the terminal. Okay, so you need to save it. You can see that the source control already tracks it. However, we can do git status if we are using the terminal. And you can see here it says modified readme. Okay, so what I can do is add dot, means that I will add everything in this folder and everything in all the subfolders. Okay, but before doing that, actually I should do like this. .git ignore, I should add something called, this is for Mac, so .ds store. Because this is an artifact in Mac that I don't want to send into GitHub. So then I put it into my Git and it will ignore this. Okay, and now you can see there's two changes. So if I do git status, you can see that modified, ignore and readme. So then I will do git commit -m, and this is my second commit, and I will just say, okay, git ignore ds store and did some text like this. So now I committed this, and I can do git push then this will send the changes to my remote. So to GitHub. So now it has pushed up. So you can see the number here disappeared. If I do git status, your branch is up to date with origin/main. So what I can do is I go back to my browser and I update this one. And here you can see new things to be committed through terminal. And you can also see here's the commit message, and here is I've added my DS store here. Okay, so in this video you have seen me going through how to install and set up Git, and then going into GitHub and creating a repository, the first repository, a demo, and then cloning it and adding some new stuff to it, git add, commit, and then push it. So that was through the terminal, but we also showed how to do it in Visual Studio Code in the code editor, which had a source control tab so that you could commit and push it from there also. And also when you're working in, for example, 2 different computers, then if you have unsynced your local branch, your local repository, and your GitHub, if it differs, then you should do git pull before you starting to change anything. Then you will get it synced. Yes, this was a very simple Git and GitHub setup. So I hope that this was interesting for you and hope that you learned a lot. This will be useful for every software development and every data engineering, data analyst, data science. So it's very important to be able to track changes and work with Git and GitHub for source control, source and version control. Yes, and thank you for this video and see you in the next one. Bye.